Today I want to address a question that I get a lot, so I figured I'd make a video on it. The question is regarding sales contracts for customers like grocery stores and restaurants, and I'm also going to delve into invoicing and different ways of structuring payments with those types of customers as well. So the question that comes up really common is, do I use contracts with these types of customers that I mentioned? Meaning that, do I sign a contract that says I will agree to provide you with this much product per week and then you will agree to buy it? I don't do that, and I don't recommend that any small farms do it. There's no real point. There's risk on both ends to do that. The risk for you as the farmer is that if you have this contract saying that you will provide this much every week and you don't have that each week, well then what are the repercussions there? Are you penalized in some way? I think it's an incredibly risky thing to do, and there's no real point to it. If you're trying to ensure consistent sales on your end, then just get better at your production and be consistent with providing product. That's the best way to do it. There's no real need to do a contract. I guess, these are more common for larger scale operations, like say and I don't know if this is exclusive to companies like this, but take Earthbound Organics, for example, some kind of big company that they might have contracts with grocery stores. Again, I don't know for sure if they do, but this is where I would imagine this type of thing would be implemented in, is where they had a huge amount of production coming on stream, and in order for a buyer to lock in a certain price point, they would agree to buy this much per week, and that's where maybe a contract would be necessary. But for anybody getting into small farming, there's no real benefit to doing that to you. Like I said, it just means that you're going to take on a risk. So my advice would be, don't worry about contracts, just find ways to make your production consistent. If you're looking for a sure bet with sales, because restaurants are risky, they're up and down, they're seasonal, they're fly by night, they could be out of business from one day to the next. Farmers markets are also up and down. Most types of market streams are going to have up and down to them. I have found in my 7 years of farming that grocery stores are the most consistent as far as, you pretty much bring the same amount to them each week. Then again, it depends on the grocery store, it depends on the city you're living in. There's so many variables there. But a sure bet, the absolute most consistent sales stream I have seen is with CSAs, with a box program. So, you've got a certain amount of members and they're going to take this much product per week. That is probably the most consistent type of market stream you can find. However, there's all kinds of nuances to a CSA as well. I've got a video on CSAs. Click up here to check that out. So regarding invoicing and structuring payments for customers, it all depends on the type of customer. Just tell you my own experience. I've had some restaurant customers that I've had since the beginning, and small type restaurants, and they pay cash every time. They pay COD, not necessarily physically cash, but it's a check or it's some form of payment upon delivery. Now that is really ideal, but bigger types of operations won't do that. Like grocery store customers that are buying hundreds of dollars at a time, they won't do that. Restaurants that are buying larger volume, they won't do that either. So the way that you structure those things most often is on terms. And so if you know anything about accounting and simple business management, this is nothing new. This is old news. But in my experience, I usually have terms. So I'll agree on those terms with the customer, and then it'll be, okay, after 30 days, those checks start coming in. So there's risk here, of course, and I wouldn't do this with a brand new customer unless they were already established and I had faith that they were going to be in business consistently throughout the year. But I've been burned on this in the past, for sure. A couple years ago, I lost $10,000 for a couple restaurants that tanked and decided not to pay me. That's a whole can of worms story there. I won't need to get into it. But the moral of the story, the message is that you need to be careful about who you create terms with. So the way those terms will work is, like I said, is like say 30 days, sometimes it's 3 weeks, sometimes places are 6 weeks, that from the time of delivery of an invoice, that invoice will be paid 6 weeks later. So usually what happens for us is whatever places we have terms with, there's a period of time at the beginning of the season where there's no money coming in. But then after those terms end, so a month or 6 weeks or whatever it is, then checks just start streaming in. Some restaurants are streaming out checks every week. Some restaurants are streaming out checks every 2 weeks. Some restaurants are streaming out checks every month. It depends on the customer and what you have set up with them. So if you're going to do this kind of thing, you need to have some kind of accounting software to manage these accounts. If you're trying to do this in spreadsheets, I mean, I guess there's probably a way to do it, but accounting software like QuickBooks or any of the others that are out there, they can do this. FreshBooks is another one. You just put in your terms under your customer profile, and then when those terms end, you'll get a reminder saying these checks should be coming in, and when you get them, you go into your software and you resolve them. So that's really how we do it on the farm. So it's at this point, since we no longer do farmers markets, we don't have any cash sales. So everything is through terms and checks. So be careful when you get into that. Restaurants are notorious for not paying their bills. There's lots of good ones out there, but running a restaurant is an incredibly risky business, and most of them fail in the first couple years. So you got to be careful there. If you're going to take on customers with terms, you've got to feel like you can trust them. You've got to, you're taking on a risk, right? But what I advise is for new customers, say it's a new restaurant that just opened, just tell them you're COD. Do COD, which is cash on delivery, for the first year, and then perhaps after that you can go on terms. If you're going to get involved with a big restaurant, they're not going to want to do COD because, if it's a 20 staff in the kitchen and it's a 80 table restaurant, they're not going to be able to give you cash on delivery. So you're going to be taking a risk there. But what you can do is put the terms, say, bi-weekly, and a worst case scenario is if you don't get paid in 2 weeks, they can really only burn you once, and so you can minimize your exposure to risk in that case. So that is the gist of it, guys. I hope that helps. If you want to see more stuff like this, please hit the subscribe button right now. Check out my Patreon page if you want to donate to the channel, and you can also do that on my PayPal through my website at theurbanfarmer.co/support. I've got tons of workshops coming up this year. I'm teaching workshops on my farm. I'm going to be in New Zealand. Got some various stuff throughout the United States. I'll be in the southern US again. That'll be going into next winter. But you're always welcome to come and take the trip up and take a workshop on my farm. I'll be doing 3 of them in June, July, and August. The dates are put up. Tickets aren't available for sale yet, but they will be in the new year. All right, talk to you soon.